Hello, I'm Chris Yanishevsky, founder of Rebel Commerce Solutions, growth partner to startups helping fearless entrepreneurs exceed their revenue goals. Welcome to the Rebellious Times podcast, where we explore the intersection of human ambition and technology. Today, I am super pumped to introduce to you Kara Whittaker, VP of Client Partnerships at Entrame. Entrame specializes in helping private equity-backed CEOs and leadership teams achieve strategic alignment, talent optimization, and operational excellence during periods of rapid change and growth. Wow, I just about managed to get through that long sentence. How are you doing, Charlie?
I'm doing fantastic, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. So we're recording this on a Friday for whoever's listening. It's towards the end of the day. So we're looking to kind of go out with a bit of a bang here and keep these energy levels up, which I know we can do.
Yeah.
So, Kara, thank you so much for joining me on a Friday. I would love to start by hearing about your evolution in leadership, how you got to where you are today in terms of coming from corporate America to leading a startup.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't take the traditional path in leadership. My journey started in the trenches. I was employee number two at a tech startup. And back then, I wore every hat, not just a few. I wore them all: operations, customer success, marketing, you name it. And the experience taught me grit, and how to stay grounded in chaos and power through building things from scratch. But the ongoing journey of my own leadership evolution was going from this scrappy generalist to a VP. And that setup wasn't just a title change, it really demanded a shift in how I saw the business and the people and the outcomes. And what really sparked my leadership evolution was the exposure to organizational health data. So not just dashboards, but real organizational intelligence, and that's what Entry deals with. Um, I saw how fast feedback, if used the right way, could be the game changer for leadership teams. And so for me personally, it was a mirror. We ran our own organizational health diagnostic at Entry, and it just completely put it into perspective for me how you think you're doing is not necessarily how your team perceives your actions, your behaviors, and your management style. And so the most important lesson I think I've learned from organizational intelligence is that leadership it becomes less about leaders trying to fix surface problems and more about just removing the friction points so that people can do their best work. And I learned that driving transformation isn't about like the heroics, the Herculean effort. It's about systems and clarity and just giving people the space to grow. And I'm still learning. So like my even though I've reached that VP status, I have such a long way to go, and I really feel like it's a lifelong journey if you stick with this, like, type of role over time.
That's awesome, thank you. And the VP status is something that was kind of close to my heart because I've progressed through my career in tech companies, kind of made it to the director level. I wasn't like these people who, from day one, starting out, they know what to do to get to the next step. They're super focused. They're very clear what is required at every various level. I was kind
Yeah.
of ducking and diving and figuring it out and making some mistakes and zigging and zagging. And set off to do my own thing before I got to the VP level. I found I'd hit a bit of a ceiling, so I like hearing the story of somebody who's kind of figured it out of what it takes to operate successfully at that level.
Yeah. Well, I don't have it all figured out, but I mean, I guess I'll say I'm open to the journey, that I'm on, and, I definitely will gravitate towards any useful piece of information that exists out there. I'm gonna soak it up like a sponge because I wanna get better every day, you know?
Well, they're awesome. So please tell me a bit more about Entrame and Entrame's customers and the problems that you solve out there.
Yeah, yeah, so Entrame is multifaceted. Entrame is a data insights platform. So, in other words, I want you to look that it's kind of like if your organization could talk, what would it say? And a lot of companies are accustomed to running engagement style surveys, but what we focus on is the holistic picture. Because it can't just be about the fluffy feel good, you know, are you happy in your role? Do you enjoy coming to work? Do you feel like your manager is supportive of you? It really digs in deep to other areas around operation, senior leadership performance, your manager's performance, company direction, org structure, training and onboarding. Like, really just think about every facet of a company. And we are looking at it with a deep lens. Like, we have it under the microscope and we're trying to, I guess, highlight those areas of risk that would ultimately lead to attrition or engagement and culture risks, which, prevent all of us from being productive. If you're not happy where you're at for one reason or another. It could be because you're burnout, or it could be because there's not the right set of processes in place to make you feel like you're successful or you could be successful at your job. Then, that's going to have an impact to the engagement and culture scores and leading into attrition and productivity issues. So, we're trying to uncover everything and shed light through the employee sentiment and the qualitative data essentially that come out of these surveys. So the CEOs and the leadership teams feel like they can take, action, but it's more tailored specifically to their company and the problems.
Interesting. Yeah, when I first spoke to you, the first thing that came to mind was customer or employee engagement surveys, right? And we had a conversation about that. And this is very much not that. I mean, when I was at one of my former employers, I thought it would be a good idea to say what I really thought. And it was kind of a situation, it was an amazing role at an amazing, very, very big company. But there were a lot of executives moving through leading. So um, we had the boots on the ground, which was us and the managers and the senior managers and directors who were building, who were very passionate about the product. There was a lot wrong. It was growing fast. Was a lot that was not working. And every time we had a new exec come and completely change the strategy, we got all frustrated, or I didn't. So the employee engagement survey would come along and I'd be like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like that. Well, I realized that's probably a bad idea because I feel that they always know exactly who's right at everything. So as soon as you've mentioned kind of this type of survey, initially I kind of froze up a little, the hairs on my arms kind of stood up. But please tell us how what Infamy does it's kind of different from one of these surveys.
Yeah, yeah. Here's what I like to here's a good analogy. A traditional survey is like a disposable camera you used on vacation. Remember back in the day, you could buy disposable cameras? And
That's lots of them that have developed the negatives on, by the way, funnily enough.
yeah, yeah. So your traditional survey is one of those disposable cameras that you took on vacation and you waited 3 months to develop it, only to realize that everything was overexposed. And so, employee engagement surveys, that's kind of how they usually go. Companies will send them out once a year, and they're heavily weighted towards like those surface level cultural and engagement metrics. They're completely missing the holistic picture or the overall org health. And then you're left staring at fuzzy results. And so the real problems, the ones that no one dares to speak openly about, are hidden in the shadows. And I feel like Entramy, what we're doing is we're building something like more immediate. So like think of your smartphone cameras with the crystal clear pictures. It's a tool that just flips that entirely where like you can quickly surface brutally honest, anonymous feedback, cutting through the pleasantries and revealing what's truly holding teams back in weeks, not months. In fact, it could be done in hours. So one of the differentiators of Etrimi is that as soon as you hit the threshold of 5 participants, in other words, you had 5 people respond, you can see those results right away. So like during that entire survey window, I can see the results pouring in real time, which is pretty neat.
Brilliant. And so it's one thing having the insights, it's another thing acting on them? How do organizations typically get hold of the insights and then actually create actions to make change in the business as a result?
Well, that's where the AI comes in. So, we have an AI engine, much like many companies do these days, working on behind the scenes, developing an action plan based on the results. So the survey runs, it closes. It's taking the qualitative data and the quantitative data, and it's marrying it together, running it through AI, and providing you with a set of tailored recommendations that you can like use as a springboard. Um, we don't want to say that these are exactly what you should be doing because there's always context, right? Like a survey, even with the feedback, like the comments coming from the employees and the scores on some of the questions that they answered, it's super helpful. I would say you're like 80% of the way there, but you've got to have the company context and that's where, your leaders should fill in those gaps using that AI action plan functionality to create like that true or finalized set of actions that you would move forward with. And you never want to do more than two or three. I'll use a company or not company, I'll use some corporate jargon here that everybody hates boiling the ocean. Everybody wants to boil the ocean. They all want to they see that there's so many things that are on fire. They sign themselves up with more than they can chew, and so our recommendation from a best practice standpoint is you've got to really focus on two or three things, no more than that, because frankly, people are going to get burnout on all of these actions, and then you're going to find out that you weren't able to get anything across the line at the end of the day, which means your employees are going to feel frustrated and felt like they weren't heard in the first place.
Yeah, makes total sense. To actually, that's always the balance, isn't it? Boiling the ocean or focusing on just one or two key initiatives, or maybe somewhere in the middle, right? Trying to get everything done. Um,
Yeah.
how do employees typically respond at the different levels as they try and incorporate this into their own strategies and activities?
Yeah, I love this question. I love this question because it's we see more than I think people realize. So, in other words, when a survey's gone live, part of the communication that goes out to you as a participant, like let's say you're the survey participant, the email that comes your way is going to tell you that if you run into any issues, feel free to contact support@entreme.com. And as you can imagine, we get some pretty interesting feedback about these surveys from the employees themselves. On the positive side, people are like, "Thank you so much for launching this. We'd never done this before, and it's amazing to feel like I can actually put my voice out there." While others are like, "Stop emailing me. I'm not taking this survey." So it's kind of a mixed bag. Um, and that's why the communication campaign up front. So we try to set our executives up for success by handing them almost like a communication campaign that they can repurpose and start teeing up this idea that we're about to run an annual employee survey. And oh, by the way, remember when we did it last year? These are all the things we were able to accomplish and get over the line. And so I feel like in most cases the participation's pretty high. We like to see somewhere in the ballpark of 65 to 70% participation. That's a good indication to us that the employee population's engaged and they want to share their thoughts and feedback. So it's rare that we would see something less than that. Um, and I like to believe, I like to err on the side of positivity. I like to believe that people, if you're working for a company, it's because you genuinely want to be there and you are proud of the work that you do and you want to see the company succeed and be a better place for everybody. So I think they would want to share their feedback.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you get that email come through, you think, okay, have I got something to contribute here? What should I say?
Yeah.
On the subject of employees, I know the human side of AI is talk about on a podcast is very important. It's kind of a key pillar. And, there's a lot of people right the way across LinkedIn and beyond who are trying to figure out where they fit in this new AI world with things changing so quickly. I'd love to hear about your experience with your team implementing AI and kind of helping them, get confidence in the new order. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So my team's first reaction to AI was basically great. Kara's bringing in robots to replace us. Until they realized it meant fewer spreadsheets and fewer manual PowerPoint presentations and more meaningful work. My team loves to talk to clients, engage with clients, but like most of us, we hate the data entry, hate the data. And I'm half joking when I say this, but I think for some on my team, myself included, Excel is like slowly killing my soul. I don't like using Excel, but it is absolutely part of my everyday. Um, and so when we rolled out AI tools to automate the data management, everybody's productivity and frankly their happiness is skyrocketed overnight because we weren't drowning in all of this data. We felt we were even more empowered to be the voice of the insights, have those strategic discussions instead of running these like spreadsheet marathons. But AI burnout is real. And you can't just throw another shiny new tool at people every quarter. I learned that the hard way with my team because I remember vividly one of my team members coming up to me and asking me, flat out, are we getting a new AI tool because we need it or because leadership saw a flashy demo? Which is a fair question. And I think transparency, it's super key. Like I had to show them exactly how AI was going to simplify their day to day before I was going to get their buy-in. So I feel like, treating AI like a partner, not a replacement, is actually what gives you the buy-in is ultimately going to make people better at their jobs.
yeah, there's almost a little kind of everybody's got their own discovery process, right? And everybody's got their own time and to dive into the AI. I mean, I was probably less than 3 years ago before I started using AI, to help with just small tasks, structuring my thoughts and structuring frameworks. Apple works quite nicely, and now I know as new challenges come up, I can think about how to construct prompts and how to leverage it. But it's that initial testing it and, you know, creating the query in the right way and kind of that discovery. If you can do it by yourself to some extent, then it's a little easier for you to understand what your boss is asking you to do. And yeah, it's it's a little journey.
Hmm. Hmm. But it's not easy. I mean, I can appreciate how AI is making a lot of people feel. And I guess I'm of the perception that you better get on board or get left behind. And I don't want to be left behind. So I feel like AI literacy isn't just a nice to have, it's a necessity. And it will be because it's not going away.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're in that new world now. And at the same time, we're reading things about, you know, companies like LLMs like Anthropic, where I believe the, the AI or their own system is trying to blackmail their own engineers. Apparently they caught it in testing, but yeah, things are evolving so rapidly. I- I'm interested to see where we'll be in a couple of years. But that was a little kind of side.
I can't even imagine. Like honestly, like I feel like do you remember how back in the day, like the Y2K era, that time frame? I just remember everybody being so afraid of Y2K, like the world was gonna shut down. I almost felt that there was a similar sense of, I don't know if urgency is the right word or chaos, but it was almost like this just bubbling of fear when ChatGPT came out and it was starting to just blow up everything we knew. It was the disruptor of the year, of probably the decade. Would you say it's like the disruptor of the decade?
For sure. This is as big as kind of the introduction of the internet.
Yeah.
Y2K was interesting because luckily Y2K happened on a big party night. So I think everybody was having fun to actually worry at the time how that
We
did that.
Yeah, we're all sitting around waiting for something to happen, and it never happens. You're just like, it's gonna happen, guys," and nothing.
That's no computer kept working. Oh, what a disappointment. I had to go back to work the next. Right. Well, it's been amazing talking to you, Cara. I'll let you get on with your weekend now. Thank you so much. I look forward to catching up with you again soon. Maybe we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
You're welcome.